Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wolfie's Wish Pet Loss Support Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Messer, and today we have a special guest who has a very unique job and role in the end of life care industry. So we have Angela Shook, and she's an end of life doula, companion animal doula, and pet loss grief specialist. She's also certified hospice and palliative care advocate through the International Association of Animal Hospice and Palliative Care, which is an amazing organization. I'm a member of that, as well as the APLB. So, welcome so much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Erica. Thanks for inviting me here today. I'm really grateful to have a chance to talk about my work as a companion animal death doula and share this role with others and let them know that there's this additional support for that pet loss journey.
I'm going to say that again because I don't like that I said I bumbled that. So I'm just going to record it and then we're going to keep going.
Oh,
So thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
thank you. Thank you, Erica.
So I guess the first question a lot of people have, and I do as well, is what exactly an end of life doula does and what we can expect when we're reaching that end of life stage with our pets, whether they're senior or they were diagnosed with an illness. Let's just dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So an end-of-life doula or death doula provides non-medical holistic support and comfort to people preparing for or experiencing end of life and helping those who love them as well. And this applies to humans and to our beloved pets. So that could be offering education and guidance, emotional, social, and spiritual care, logistical and practical assistance, and much more
Wow.
before, during, and after the death. The end of life doula movement has really gained a lot of momentum in the past probably 10 years. And so more people are becoming aware that doulas are available for end of life for their humans. But because our pets mean so much to us, their deaths could be just as emotionally devastating, and in some cases, even more so than the death of a loved one, a human loved one. So, just as an end of life doula serves those nearing death and those who love them, there really is space for a companion animal doula to provide that same non medical comfort and support to not only those special animals, but their caretakers as well.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up about the pain of losing a pet because I remember about 6 months ago posting on LinkedIn about that. And my dad had a heart attack. I mean, not literally, but he said, you really shouldn't say that. And I said, but it's true, Dad. Like, let's have a conversation that a lot of people experience acute pet loss grief because they are with their animals 24/7 and not only, caring for them, but they're receiving the love too. It's a special bond. And he was just kind of flabbergasted about that. And I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that, especially a non-pet owner or someone who has a pet for security purposes or, isn't in bed with us or um, at the dinner table with us having
Right.
maybe birthday cake. This we invite our pets into every area of our lives now.
We do.
Um,
There's
so
such
I'm
a,
really
yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. So I'm really glad to hear you acknowledge that right off the bat.
I think it's really important, that that human animal bond that you referenced is so mutually beneficial, but so impactful. It's for some of us, it's a daily companion. They are part of the most intimate parts of our lives. And we care for them. They care for us. We're responsible for them. It's so much more than just a dog or just a cat. I
Right.
think that I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing and sharing because pet loss is still very much a disenfranchised grief. People don't understand the impact of it, or they might say, a week or two later, why are you still grieving? Just get another animal. And that doesn't help. When your grief isn't validated and you're not able to express it, it gets more intense and you feel more isolated. So the more we can do to recognize this important relationship, the more that we can support that and honor that relationship, the more healing that is for the family of that animal that's lost.
A lot of people that get into this space, myself included, went through a loss that really floored them or rocked their world, for lack of a better way to explain it. And do you have a story behind how you became an end of life doula
I
that you would
do.
mind sharing? That you
I'd be
wouldn't mind
glad
sharing?
to. And I think you're right. I think that a lot of people come into this work, whether for humans or for animals, because they either had a beautiful experience and they want others to have that, or they've had a really difficult one and they want to help ensure that others don't have that same trauma as well. Um, for me, I came to end of life care almost 7 years ago now as a hospice volunteer, but it really wasn't until the death of one of my own family members where I saw the impact of that additional support that's needed at end of life care. And I was so touched and awed by the hospice team that cared for not only him, but for our entire family. That's when I really found the passion for this work and dove full heartedly into educating myself further. I took several doula trainings and workshops and read countless books and really dedicated more time to hospice volunteering. And I eventually left my previous career in fund development for children's hospitals because I wanted just to do this full time. I just fell in love with this work. So I ended up actually becoming president of the National End of Life Doula Alliance and working for hospice full time. Since then, I've actually started my own company, Dragonfly End of Life Services. And for the past 2 years, I've been getting a lot more involved with end of life care for animals. And partly, like you said, a part of it was there was a class offering. I was already a doula, but there was an offering at the University of Vermont for companion animal doulas. And I thought, wow, this would be a great thing to add to my toolkit. As I'm working with humans, sometimes they have pets too, and helping them through what's going to happen to my animal after I'm gone, or maybe they're ill and they're also dealing with an elderly animal. I saw that there was a lot of opportunity to help support both humans and animals through end of life. And then selfishly too, I had an elderly dog who was 16, and I knew that my time with her was getting short. I knew I needed to prepare myself for it, but I also really wanted to make sure I was doing the best possible I could by her so that her end of life was peaceful and comfortable and had the best quality of life possible. So taking that class really helped me through her loss and her end of life. And I was so amazingly touched by I found a mobile local veterinarian who actually came to our home to help with that last day. And having that peace in my home and being around her and letting my family be around her, um, I saw the correlation between the work that the local mobile vet did and what I do. And so we actually partnered about 2 years ago so that I helped take care of her end of life animals and partners. So I help with quality of life assessments and anticipatory grief, especially when there's children involved. Sometimes that's the first death that that child has encountered, and the parents are lost of how to share what's happening to their family animal. So as a doula, I can help companion through that, even help be there as a support at the end of life appointment, and also being able now to offer pet loss grief support for as long as is needed afterwards.
Oh, wow. Well, you said a lot in there that I want to let the listeners in on because maybe this is the first time they've heard some of these terms like anticipatory loss. And, this is the stage when, hopefully I will have my cats for a really long time, but they will start
Right.
developing, joint mobility issues, probably kidney failure and things like this, or heart problems. And so, knowing that that time is coming after so many years, this is when the anticipatory loss starts, when people start having to think about saying goodbye, and maybe they don't have the luxury of having a lot of time. Maybe they get a diagnosis, and so anticipatory loss is, you know, trying to get a new normal or a framework or understand what is going to happen when this animal is gone. And
Right.
this can be extremely debilitating and stressful for a lot of people to the point where they are incapacitated.
Absolutely. I almost think sometimes anticipatory grief can start from the moment you start that relationship with the animal, just knowing that they most likely will have a shorter lifespan than yours. Um, we go into that relationship knowing we're not going to have them as long as we would like, and maybe sometimes that's why we love them a little harder. We're
Mm,
already knowing that our time with them is limited. Um, I like to share with my clients, even clients who have brand new puppies or healthy cats or they're young, that it's never too early to start thinking about that. Just as with humans who do advanced care directives, it's really a gift to start thinking about that now and putting those ideas into place so that when that time comes, you're not making rushed, urgent decisions, based out of stress or emotion. You've already made those decisions of, okay, how can I adapt my home for the animal? And when it is their last day, would I like that to be at home or in a clinic? Would I like to bury them at home? Would I like to have them cremated and have their ashes back? It gives you that chance then. So when the time comes, you're prepared. And you can really sit with your grief and be present for the animal rather than rushing around making those decisions and feeling even more stressed. I think just having some of those advanced care plans in place just gives you a lot of relief and comfort and maybe can help alleviate some of that anticipatory grief that happens when that time gets closer.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this was something that I had to learn the hard way. Um, I got Wolfgang as a kitten and, just took for granted I was going to have him a long time, and he died suddenly and tragically. And so not only am I dealing with the shock and trauma, but the veterinarian is asking me, do you want to take him home with you? Do you want to have him cremated? If you want him cremated, do you want to have an urn? And it was just too much. And now I know about, fur clippings and paw prints and nose prints and all these beautiful things we can do to memorialize our pets and keep them with us. And so now that I'm through that, and uh, I didn't keep, anything. I had him cremated, but I didn't get the urn because I was just in shock and I couldn't
Right.
even really think. So anyway, I have some basic plans now for the cats that I have, should that happen suddenly, and this is a really hard area to breach with people. It's like nobody wants to think about their own end of life. No one wants to think about death. It's very sad. We no one's going to argue that, but to have a basic plan is so helpful for what you just said, and that it gives us, a little bit of peace of mind knowing we put a plan in action, or we put a plan together that we can just have in action. And so, for the listeners that um maybe have pets now, or and you've been through loss and you want to learn how to do it better, or grieve better, or be more prepared, you can go ahead and bookmark our website. So angelashook.com, and this will be in the show notes as well, everyone. And also wolfieswish.com. Book them on your printout, the homepage, hide it in a drawer, just do some preliminary things if you can't get to the point where you can really sit down and make a hard plan now because it's too hard. Knowing that you have a place to go to, I think also gives some people peace of mind. And Angela, I hope that veterinarians, when they're giving the new puppy shots and welcoming kittens and, testing out all, just checking them out, that they're able to say and communicate some of these things without it being awkward to the pet parent. Because, like you said, in most cases, we're going to outlive our pets. We're going to outlive several pets if you're a serial cat owner like myself and my mom. And so we have to be prepared at some point for these, and it never gets easier, but we can be as prepared as possible. And so I know I just said a lot, but we definitely covered the anticipatory loss, and then I think still for if someone were to hire you to help them, with the anticipatory support, and if they're in your area, which is what part of Michigan?
I'm in northern Michigan, so about an hour south of the Upper Peninsula. And I
Okay.
do serve a lot of people locally, but honestly, I serve just as many remotely. I actually just had a client from Norway reach out.
Oh,
So
wow.
I definitely have the ability to, with the wonder of technology, being able to support anybody no matter where they are.
Oh, that's so beautiful to know. That was going to be my next question. And so helping them through the process and then like you said, with the grief support afterwards. I mean, how does a person know if they need grief support, right?
Right.
We all know grief is hard, but at what point, where's that threshold for needing professional assistance?
That's a great question because I've seen a little bit of everything along the scale. I think sometimes after the fact, somebody just needs to talk. They just need to be able to tell the stories of their animal because they're missing them and they want somebody to validate that relationship. Sometimes it's just one session. Sometimes it's just giving them some resources for maybe chat room grief support or books that have been helpful or links that have been helpful. But honestly, I really find that sometimes it's just that one session that they need to be heard. They maybe don't have the support system and they maybe have people who are saying, why are you still grieving? Or why are you so sad? It was just an animal. So giving them that space to, that safe space to very vulnerably share their feelings and to have those emotions validated. Sometimes they need more than that. They're struggling to progress down their grief process. They may be getting stuck. There may be guilt involved with a complicated situation, and so they may just need a little bit more time to process that. And having someone to do that with is helpful. I really think that sharing of resources has been important. A lot of times pet owners aren't aware of all the options that are available for them. And so being able to share that has been very, very helpful. I do remind them that I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a mental health professional, but I have been trained in pet loss grief support. And if I feel that maybe their pain or their sadness is far beyond what I can help them with, then I have the ability then to refer them to somebody who could maybe give them more clinical and in-depth support. But I find most people just need to talk about their animals. They need to have somebody who says, "It's okay to still hurt. It's okay that you're missing them. It's okay. Um, you will always miss them." I don't believe that there's ever complete closure. I don't even like that word, and I don't like the phrase when people say, "Oh, it's time to move on." I think you can move forward, and I think that you can move through that pain, but that grief's always going to be there because that love's always going to be there.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing that we can hold on to is the love and the memories. And that's really what got me through those dark, dark days. And I want to touch on something that's sensitive, and there is a trigger warning in the beginning of the episode about suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. This is not uncommon, and yet I think we're all ashamed and embarrassed to admit it. And I want to voice and, just go out on a limb and say, this is what happened to me. I remember very distinctly thinking, I don't want to be here, but I don't want to die. I don't
Right.
understand what what is going on with me, but my pain is so strong that I don't want to be here.
Mhm.
And, I didn't have a plan, but I think it was this kind of persistent thinking that made me reach out to a professional. And, you know, I didn't look for, I mean, I've had a therapist before and I called her first. Um, but if someone is going through, maybe someone is listening right now and it's even been some time since their pet has passed and they're kind of going, "Oh yeah, I think like that sometimes. Like what if I just don't wake up tomorrow?" kind of thinking. What would you say is the best course of action to get help and address that?
Thank you for bringing this up because I do feel that a lot of people feel this way and go through that. I've heard more than one client say, I don't necessarily want to die, but I don't want to live without my pet either. And they don't know how to go from there. I think even recognizing that in yourself and being self aware enough to say, I am having these feelings and vocalizing them and reaching out for support is so strong. What strength that shows to know that you need help. Again, I'm not a mental health professional. So if I hear a client saying that, I definitely want to ask more questions. I want to validate those feelings and let them know that that's natural and it's okay to feel that way. There's nothing wrong with them for feeling that way. But I would want to refer them to somebody who could give them more better assistance and more thorough mental health assistance. But I do want that to know that that's a common and natural part of grief to
Hmm.
feel that sad, to feel that depressed. It's not something to be taken lightly, and I think a lot of people just feel that they're weak and they don't want to share that with anybody. And if I could say anything, it's a strength to know that you need help. It's a strength to be vulnerable and to share that you're feeling sad and that you're scared and in pain, and that there's people here who want to and are willing to help that.
I love this thought. It comes to mind that really helped me in the early stages, and that is the amount of pain I feel is equal to the love that I gave. And it
Mhm.
gets me every time. And that actually turned into one of the Wolfie's Wish grieving cards that I wrote, because these were all insights and tools that I picked up along the way. I mentioned I've been in therapy and in recovery. And so I had a lot of tools to draw upon. And I think the hardest part was acceptance. A
Yes.
lot of people talk about acceptance and one day at a time, but it didn't make me feel better. And that was really frustrating that, some people who believe in the stages of grief will say that, acceptance is the final stage. But when I knew intellectually that I needed to get to that place, I thought that I could hurry it. I thought I could go through the other stages or somehow like, snap my fingers and be like, okay, I accept this has happened. Yes. Okay, let's be strong, like you said, and move on. But uh, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of very, very big, sensitive love and vulnerability. And these are all gifts and strengths. If we didn't have these ranges of emotions, we wouldn't be human. And I hope that that sentiment or that thought gives some listeners some encouragement and hope that the amount of pain you're feeling or felt is because you loved so deeply, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a gift.
I 100% agree. And I love what you said about the stages of grief because I think people misunderstand those and think that maybe they're linear and you're going to go through this order and then suddenly you're cured and you're healed and you feel better. And that's not the case. Not everybody goes through every one of those prescribed stages. They don't happen in order. You may hit one or two. There's no normal way or right way to grieve. The right way to grieve for you is the right way to grieve for you, and you're the only one who could do that. So I think it's important to note that, grief's messy. It doesn't just go in order. You can't plan it out. You can't say, okay, step one, I'm done with that. Step two, I'm done with that. You may feel like you're past one of those phases and be hit with them out of the blue a year later. There's just no perfect, normal, right way to grieve. And I think people get caught up on that. Why do I still feel angry? I should be past this by now. Why am I still so sad? Why do I still feel such disbelief? Why can't I get to that resolution spot or that place of acceptance? And it's okay. However, whatever process it takes you on your own grief journey is okay. And I think that needs to be shared more often that there's no right or wrong way, and nobody can tell you how to grieve better than you do it yourself.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm thinking about two things. And one is how do we communicate to others that are listening and maybe, still suffering or in those first few months where everything is just not normal and very surreal, that things will get better. I'm sure they're told this by people on the outside, but I'm also sure that there's people that question that themselves and say, when will it get better? How do I know I'm going to be okay? Do you have any comments on that and addressing, this long timeline and that we can't hurry our grief?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because so many people say, "Oh, time heals all wounds," right? Or it'll get better with time. And maybe it's not a popular opinion to say this, but I don't think that time fixes it. I think time might soften it. Maybe it's not as intense as it was, but you always live with that. And kind of like what you said, carrying a little bit of that grief is just continuing to carry that love. So I don't know if it gets 100% fixed. I don't know if there ever is where you go back to your old normal, but I do think you get to a place where you can remember that pet, with love and with memories and happiness and joy and carry that with you, and that becomes the gift. And part of the price of that is to still carry a little bit of that pain because you will miss them. You know, the doesn't matter what your spiritual beliefs are, your cultural beliefs are, that physical relationship has ended. But I still believe that you can carry that love and that connection with you throughout the rest of your life.
Curious, you brought up this idea of or what your spiritual beliefs are. For me, I have found that having a spiritual basis or a spiritual component of my life that I lean in on to help me through things like this. And I don't know what I would have done or how I would have been okay if that wasn't part of my healing journey. And yet everyone has everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, and many are different, and some are, you know, agnostic and don't fall into that. Would you say that it's more helpful to be having some kind of spiritual program, if you will, or are people, is anyone able to heal?
I think anyone's able to heal. I think anyone is able to progress and heal. I'm sure that for many, that having a spiritual or religious faith to carry them through that is hugely important. I'm working with a client right now who's struggling with that a bit, who doesn't have that, I guess, religious background or faith. And when people tell her, well, it's okay, your animal's across the rainbow bridge, you'll be reunited someday, that's not helping her. She doesn't
Mm,
believe that. And so not
mm.
having that reunion to look forward to and people share that, it's actually painful and not beneficial or helpful to her. And so she's struggling with how do I keep a spiritual relationship and a spiritual connection when I don't believe in that reunion. And we've really been doing a lot of work together to realize that spirituality and that spiritual connection doesn't have to be faith or religion based. It can be um, honoring them by sharing their stories and sharing their pictures and continuing to talk to them, keeping their things close by, having a talisman. You know, you talked about those lovely paw prints and nose prints and the fur clippings and the beautiful jewelry you can have made now. A way to, maybe have a bracelet with those fur clippings and being able to still touch and connect physically with something and having that spiritual, emotional connection. I think that is just as meaningful and helpful as anything else.
A little while ago, you mentioned, there's sometimes people that will say after a couple of weeks, oh, you're still grieving. It's time to move on. It was just a fill in the blank.
Right.
Is there is there a response that you would like the general public to know or that you've found to be really actually helpful? Um, Mine is to ask people, what did you love about your pet? And I see a shift in them when I ask them that question. So that's my go-to when someone tells me they've lost a pet, which is often because this is the line of work I'm in. Do you have a way to redirect, some of these old sayings or something that you find is really helpful to kind of replace that just get another one mentality that we can
Yeah,
we can
I
start to
like that.
adopt?
I like the way that you reframe that as well and gear it towards a positive and honoring way. Some of those questions are wonderful, right? Like, I love to ask, how did they get their name? There's always such great stories there. All of those different nicknames that come with your pets as you live with them. I think that's
Yep.
always so fun to understand, like, how did it go from that name to this name? And tell me about it. Where did that come from? Um, and I think sometimes when people say, "Oh, it's just a pet," I like to say, "Well, it was a companion. It wasn't my pet, it was my companion." And what were the things that you learned from that companion? What did you love doing best with that companion? What I think the lessons that we learn from our animals are so meaningful and unique and different than what we can get from anywhere else. And bringing those stories to the surface, I think, are helpful. And when you're sharing those stories, and when somebody says, "Oh, it's just a dog, it's just a cat," I think responding back with, no, this was my companion. This was my friend. I've lost a meaningful relationship. You don't tell somebody who just lost their father, well, there's always other people in your life, get another dad. It doesn't work that way, and it's not as respectful, and it doesn't share the significance of the loss by saying, "We'll just replace that." Relationships are irreplaceable, and so sharing what was irreplaceable and what was valuable to you with that relationship, I think both honors the pet and your relationship and your love between them, and also kinda signals to others that this is more significant than you were valuing it as, and you need to know that. This is I learned from this person, or this animal. I loved with this animal. I shared my life with this animal. This isn't something to be replaced. This is something to be honored and respected and remembered.
I love that. And I think that a lot of people will say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, or they've kind of got it's an awkward conversation, right?
Yeah.
From both sides. And so I love the redirection of, well, tell me what was your pet's name and, what were their nicknames or how they get that name is such a great way to redirect the awkwardness because then you're both the person that has lost the pet is instantly in joy and excited to tell you and
Right.
honor their pet and their legacy. And I think it's also fun for the recipient to know, oh, I've heard some really original names, and the
Oh,
best pet name I've ever heard so far was Monster.
ah,
And that was the name of a dog, that my neighbor's dog. And so I got to hear her call Monster to come inside. And it's probably one of the best, I gotta say, it's like the best pet name because you just imagine it right now, right?
oh, yeah.
Monster, come on inside. Time to go
I
to
love
bed.
that.
Monster, you know, is hilarious. And
It is.
so oftentimes these stories really shift the energy and the conversation. And then what went from an awkward exchange is now meaningful and relaxed, which is, I think, what what will make things a lot easier um, moving forward with the concept and talk of loss. And for people like yourself and so many other pet loss professionals and caring people that are trying to make a difference. And my friend Erica Sinner, she and I wrote a petition to have pet bereavement leave in the workplace. And this was going to be a lifelong goal of mine, but I didn't realize that it was so attainable until I met her. And so these are great movements, but it also shows the significance and the change that's happening in American culture about our relationship with animals and the human animal bond. And I think it's wonderful progress. And so along that though, we need to educate people on how to communicate about these losses. And I think you've brought up a great it's a new idea to me to ask people about, their names and their pets' names. And I think anyone would enjoy that type of conversation, whether it's a colleague or, you know, when I lost Wolfgang, I flew home to see my mom. I was so distraught and I was crying on the plane and it just tears they just come. You can't control it. And I remember I had got up to the bathroom and I was kind of okay. And as soon as I sat down, I started crying. And the man next to me said, are you okay? What's going on? And I'm like, oh God, how do I explain this? And he said, "Oh yeah, I mean, this woman at my church just lost her cat, and she's also really upset." And he was luckily very compassionate and understanding, even though I could tell he didn't understand. So I think just the culture shift and that it's going to be okay to talk about pet loss. It's going to be okay to talk about human loss,
Right.
you know, and it's not this taboo subject. It's not something we all have to run and hide from. We're not going to catch it. We're not going to catch grief. It's not a disease.
Right. Yeah, I love that you say that because, we are living in a very death phobic society where nobody wants to talk about it. Like you said, they either think it's catching or it's morbid or it's just too sad and they don't want to face it. And how funny is that considering it's the one universal thing that we are all going to experience at some point, but nobody wants to talk about it. And I think when you are able to talk about it and hold space for it and share with others that you're comfortable talking about death. The people who need to talk about it find you. Talking about the stories that you mentioned, and that's one of my favorite parts of being a doula is also being a story catcher. Getting to witness and validate those precious memories and sacred last moments. It's helpful for the person who's grieving, but for me personally, it's a joy. I get to experience all these animals and all of these beautiful relationships that I wouldn't have been able to if somebody wasn't kind enough and generous enough to share them with me. So gathering those stories and hearing them is one of my favorite parts of doing this work. I have some really beautiful favorite stories, and I hold them with me, and maybe that way I'm also honoring those animals and that relationship with them.
I love it. Angela, is there anything you would like our listeners to know before we end?
Um, I guess for those who are grieving, know that you're not alone. Know that there are so many resources out there. There's so many others that want to support you in this, that it can feel isolating, but it doesn't have to. You don't have to go through it alone. I can't fix it for you. I can't bring your baby back, but I can walk that path with you. And so can other doulas, so can other pet loss grief specialists. There's such a beautiful community out there of people who want to support you through this, who've been through it themselves. Uh, just knowing that you're not alone. I really want to make sure that people are aware that there's resources like yours and mine available to help support you through this really emotionally devastating time, that it's okay to grieve and that however you grieve is okay.
I love that. And Angela, where is the best place for people to find you? Are you on Instagram and Facebook? And are all those links on your website?
I
Where would you
am.
like people to go?
Yeah, I think the easiest place to find me is just at my website, which is really easy, www.angelashook.com. And I'm also on Facebook under Dragonfly End of Life Services. And I'm always happy to offer support or help you find referrals or help you find other companion animal doulas. I feel like this is a community where we can lift each other up and be there for each other.
And for those of you listening, that's SHOOK. And you can also find a link to her on wolfieswish.com. And in the show notes, we'll make sure you get in touch. And Angela, thanks so much for sharing and enlightening us about end of life care and validating pet loss. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. The beautiful cards, I've been using them. I love them. And thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate having the chance to share our work and hopefully help support somebody else who needs this kind of care.